What is bread? Bread is a food made of flour, water, and yeast or another leavening agent, mixed together and baked. Around 300 million Americans used bread in the last year alone. Bread is considered to be the earliest of processed foods. In fact, recent scholarship suggests humans started baking bread at least 30,000 years ago. It was a well-developed industry in Egypt in 3000 BC. Bread was made from a variety of ingredients, though often only a specific species of wheat was thought best, though almost any cereal was suitable. Depending on the type of flour, the structure and texture of a loaf could be very different, and just as today, all breads were not light, risen, or spongy. As bread began to spread across the world, it was known for being nourishment for labor forces. Many armies were well equipped with machinery to make bread because it was a fantastic carbohydrate when traveling. Bakers' guilds are a big part of bread's history. Bakers' guilds were introduced to protect the interests of members and to regulate controls governing the price and weight of bread. By Tudor times, Britain was enjoying increasing prosperity and had become a real status symbol. The nobility ate small, fine white loaves called manchets. Merchants and tradesmen ate wheaten cobs, while poor had to be satisfied with bran loaves.
The raw ingredients used to make bread include a wild yeast starter culture or active yeast, white flour or wheat flour, salt, water, and canola oil. Alternative raw ingredients can also be used, and they will impact the final product. Different types of flour can be used as they have different protein and starch content. Sugars can be added to add more flavor to the final product and also provide an additional source of fermentable sugars. Enzymes can also be added as they increase the amount of free sugars. Dough improvers, like oxidizing and reducing agents, can change the dough structure. Biological preservatives can also be added, as they can prevent spoilage by fungi. Emulsifiers can also be added, as they increase water absorption and gas retention of dough.
For our bread, a wild yeast culture was used, as well as a known species of Saccharomyces cerevisiae. No known bacteria was used because we did not make bread that needed the addition of bacteria such as lactic acid bacteria for sourdough. They grow aerobically at an optimal temperature of 30 degrees Celsius and thrive with continuous agitation. They require a pH of 4.0 to 5.0. Some other nutrients for yeast include ammonium phosphate, magnesium sulfate, calcium sulfate, zinc, and iron. Some nutrients for yeast are ammonium phosphate, magnesium sulfate, calcium sulfate, zinc, and iron. They get their nitrogen from amino acids and urea, and they get their vitamins from biotin and thiamine. Yeast ferments starch and other available sugars such as glucose, maltose, and added sucrose. Glucose is metabolized preferentially via the EMB. Acids, CO2, and ethanol are produced from fermentation. Gluten is also being made. During the bread making process, CO2 production stretches the gluten, forming spongy and elastic dough. Acid compounds add flavor.
The primary structure of white and wheat flour provided starch and protein. The presence of fermentation was evident by the rising dough, which indicated a difference in starting materials. The active yeast consumed the starting materials of sugar and other carbohydrates and converted it into CO2 and ethanol. The texture of the final bread product was different as it began as dry flour and turned into an elastic dough, then finally, after baking, into a loaf of bread. The benefit of baking bread is that it converts wheat into a more functionable and consumable form. This adds value to the product.